Hello everyone, welcome to this video tutorial where we will be looking at the relationship between fractions, decimals and percentages. So this is very, very important in maths, very, very important to understand how we get from a fraction and say the same fraction as a decimal and say the same fraction and decimal as a percentage. In other words, there are three ways of saying something that is less than one. So for example, if we imagine that we have got a pizza. So I'm going to draw on the screen now. We've got one pizza, right? So if we take some of that away, we're taking less than one pizza away, aren't we? We've only got one pizza. So if we take, let's divide it into quarters, for example. If we take 1/4 away, so let's imagine someone has eaten a slice. Let's say they ate that slice there. Well, they haven't eaten one pizza, have they? They've eaten one slice, and that slice we need to be able to express it as a fraction, as a decimal, and as a percentage. Okay, so it can be a little bit tricky, but this is one of those things that with enough practice it will start to become very, very straightforward. Okay, I promise. So let's talk about how we do this now. Instead of drawing lots of pizzas, we're just going to imagine the pizza. Okay, let's imagine that there is a pizza that is cut equally into 7 slices. Okay, now that would be the denominator, wouldn't it? Okay, the denominator is how many equal bits we have. So we've got 7 equal slices. But if someone takes 2 of those slices, they've taken 2/7 of the pizza. Okay, they've taken 2/7, 2/7. So that would be the fraction. But how do we express that fraction as a decimal and as a percentage? Okay, let's do it. So in order to change a fraction into a decimal, what we need to do is divide the numerator, the top number, by the bottom number, the denominator. We do the top number divided by the bottom number, so 2 divided by 7. Okay, so I'm going to set that out in a bus stop. 2 divided by 7. Okay, now quite often students get confused and then they solve 7 divided by 2 because it feels right. Dividing a bigger number by a smaller number feels right. But trust yourself, it's always, or user processing is always correct. We do the top number and we divide it by the bottom number. How do we do that then? Let's have a look. So we solve it like any normal bus stop. So 7 into 2. How many times does 7 go into 2? It doesn't. 7 does not go into 2. 7 is too big. Okay, so it doesn't, it goes in 0 times. Now, because my answer begins with a 0, that must mean it's a decimal answer. So I'm going to put a decimal point, and as soon as I put that decimal point, I always put a placeholder underneath. So now the number is 20. So 7 into 20. How many times does 7 go into 20? 7. 14, it goes in twice. We have to stop at 14. We can't go any higher or we're going to go past 20. Okay, so 7, 14, it goes in twice. But we landed on 14, which means we've got a remainder. We have a remainder of 6. Okay, so that remainder goes down here and we add a placeholder. Whenever we put remainders at the bottom, we add a placeholder afterwards. Okay, so how many times does 7 go into 60? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56. It goes in 8 times. We landed on 56 though. So we've got a remainder of 4. And that goes down here and we follow it with a placeholder. How many times does 7 go into 40? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. It goes in 5 times. We landed on 35. So I've got a remainder of 5 and a placeholder. How many times does 7 go into 50? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49. It goes in 7 times. Now we do have a remainder. However, let's stop. Whenever we have 4 decimal places, we can agree that we can stop there. Otherwise, we'll be going on forever. Okay, so we've got 4 decimal places. We're done. So we have changed the fraction into a decimal. The decimal is 0.2857. Alexa, what's 2/7 as a decimal?
2/7 as a decimal is 0.2857.
Okay, so once you've checked it, when you're working it out and checking it, always check it, because when it's confirmed that you're correct, you know you've done it right. If the answer is wrong, then you know you've done something wrong, and then you can check what you've done wrong. Okay, so always check your answer when you're practicing something. Okay, so we know what the decimal is, but what is the percentage? The percentage is the easiest thing in the world, I promise. Okay, all we do is multiply the decimal number, this one, by 100. Okay, now if that sounds tricky, whenever we multiply something by 100, we just get the decimal point and move it twice to the right, and we're done. So that decimal point, let's imagine it moving once, twice. If we can imagine a decimal point there, instead of here, what would our number be? It would be 28.57. Yeah, so the percentage is 28.57. And we're done. That's what, so if you have a pizza and it's cut into 7 bits and someone takes 2 slices, you can say they've eaten 28.57 of a pizza. And it sounds really cool and really impressive. All right. So that's how we do it. Let me show you how to do one more before you start practicing yourself. So let's go for a really common fraction. So let's go for 3/4. The reason I've gone for 3/4 is because I imagine most of you already know the answer. If you don't, it's not a problem. We can work it out now. But I just want you to see that if you do know the answer already, I want to see it in action. I want to see the working out happening. Okay. So how do we change a fraction into a decimal? Remember, we do the top number 3 divided by the bottom number 4. So 3 divided by 4. So bus stop, 3 divided by 4. How many times does 4 go into 3? 4 is too big. It goes in 0 times. Our answer begins with a 0, so let's add a decimal point, and then the placeholder at the bottom. How many times does 4 go into 30? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28. It goes 7 times. We land on 28, so I've got a 2 remainder. Add the placeholder. How many times does 4 go into 20? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. It goes 5 times. There is no remainder. We're done. If there's no remainders, then we're done. Okay, 0.75. Okay, so we've got 0.75. How do we turn that into a percentage? We multiply it by 100. So we'll get our decimal point and we move it once, twice. So it would say 75. Okay, this decimal point would no longer be here. So our number would be 75. So 75%. Okay, so the answer is 75%. And that's how we do it. That's how we turn a fraction into a decimal and into a percentage. Now, if we've got a percentage and we want to turn it into a decimal, we'll just go backwards, don't we? Yeah, so to get from decimal to percentage, we multiply by 100. So to get from percentage to decimal, we divide by 100. So we get that decimal point at the end and move it twice to the left. Let me just show you what I mean. Okay, so if we've got the number, if we've got, I don't know, let's say 65%, I'll just write 65. To change it into a decimal, if there's no decimal point at the end, so we imagine there's one there, and we move it twice to the left, once, twice, and put it there. And my answer is 0.65 or 0.65. Okay, so it's just the same, but we're working backwards. All right, so that's how we convert fractions into decimals and percentages. But we need to be able to add some reasoning to this question. So let's have a go at this question. I'll go through this one, but of course there's a worksheet attached to this video. So make sure that once you've watched this, you try the worksheet. However, if you're feeling up for it, pause the video at this point and attempt this question. And when you've done it, press play and see if you got it correct. Okay, so Brian, let's just say I do apologize. Brian and Jacqueline are eating pizza for dinner. Both pizzas are the same size. Brian cuts his pizza into 7 equal slices and eats 4 of them. Jacqueline cuts her pizza into 5 equal slices and eats 3 of them. Who eats more pizza? All right, let's take it one at a time. So what does Brian do? Brian has a pizza which has 7 equal slices. So I'm going to write B for Brian. Now remember that the number of equal slices is 7. So that's the number that goes at the bottom. And he eats 4 of them. That number goes at the top. Okay, 7 equal slices at the bottom, but we're working with 4. 4 is the number we're working with. That's how much he's eaten. Okay, so Brian's eaten 4 over 7. What has Jacqueline eaten? Jacqueline, let's write J. She has divided the pizza into 5. That goes at the bottom, and she's eaten 3 of them. So she's eaten 3/5 of the pizza. Who eats more? Okay, well, it's difficult to compare these two fractions because they have different denominators. We've got 4/7 and 3/5. That's not very easy to compare. So what can we do? We can turn them into decimals, which are much easier to compare. So how do we turn this into a decimal? We do 4 divided by 7. Okay, so 4 divided by 7. How many times does 7 go into 4? It doesn't. It's too big. So we do a 0 followed by a decimal point at the placeholder. How many times does 7 go into 40? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. It goes 5 times, but we landed on 35, so I've got a 5 remainder at the placeholder. How many times does 7 go into 50? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49. 7 times. But I landed on 49, so I've got a 1 remainder at the placeholder. How many times does 7 go into 10? Just the once, with a 3 remainder. How many times does 7 go into 30? It goes 4 times. We can stop there because we've got 4 decimal places. So Brian has eaten 0.5714 of his pizza. Let's now move over to Jacqueline. 3 divided by 5. So bus stop, 3 divided by 5. How many times does 5 go into 3? It doesn't. It goes in 0 times at the decimal point, at the placeholder. How many times does 5 go into 30? 5 goes into 35, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Goes in 6 times. We can compare these numbers much easier than comparing the fractions. Brian has eaten 0.5714. Jacqueline has eaten 0.6. So Jacqueline's eating more because we know 0.6 is a larger number than 0.5714. Okay, and that's it. That's how we do it. With questions like these, I think the main things to be careful with are making sure that we divide the top number by the bottom number, because like I said at the beginning of this video, many students mix it up and do the bottom number divided by the top number, and that obviously gives you the wrong answer. And the only other thing that could go wrong, that goes wrong sometimes, is the division. When we're dividing, we've got to make sure that we're doing it very carefully. Okay, so make sure that our remainders are accurate, and how many times a number goes into a number, make sure that's accurate, because if you make one mistake, the whole answer is wrong. Okay, so we've got to be careful. That's why we need to practice loads, and that's why we need to always check our answer. Okay, so that's the end of this video. In the description of this video, there's a worksheet with questions based on fractions being turned into decimals and percentages, and some word problems as well. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.